Alright. So I'll just like introduce you. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another very interesting video on a highly requested topic. Today I brought in my cousin Janelle. Some of you may recognize her. It's been a hot minute since you were on my channel though. Like in a full video.
Yeah, it's been a long
couple years.
Yeah. What up, homies? I'm back in the camera.
And now you're educated, so you're here to help us with today's video.
A year ago, I graduated with my degree in psychology, and now I'm getting my master's in mental health counseling. So I guess I kind of have an idea of what's going on, but
I feel like you can help explain this.
Yeah, it is really interesting, just even if you don't have anything to do with a psych background, it's so intriguing and just weird.
It is
for sure.
Very weird. It's pretty mind-blowing
So weird.
for sure.
Stanford Prison Experiment was an experiment that was done in 1971 at Stanford University.
Where the smart people go.
And it went from August 14th through August 20th, so really not that long. It wasn't a very long experiment.
7 days.
Yeah, it was supposed to go a lot longer, but it could not. It had to end. You'll see why. The whole idea of it was to see the psychological effects on perceived power.
And this specific experiment was focusing on the dynamic between a prisoner and a prison guard.
Kind of see the dynamic of one person being the guard who has tons of power and can tell this other person, the prisoner, to do anything. And really they strip away their power, they strip them away as humans, and kind of see what the effects are of really like dehumanizing someone. And it's kind of to see how much abuse someone will take before they say, okay, that's enough.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And how far will someone on the other side take things before feeling bad or having a conscience?
Out of 75 possible candidates to be in the experiment, 25 of them were chosen. Roughly half of them were assigned to be prison guards. Roughly half of them were assigned to be prisoners. And they were randomly assigned. Once they were chosen, they were given a small psych test to make sure that they didn't have any, pre-existing conditions or mental illnesses that needed to be addressed beforehand, and just make sure that everyone was on the same playing field. The participants were paid $15 a day. So
$15 a day to be a prisoner?
Well, that was back in the 70s as well. But most of the time when I know, being a prisoner, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take that for $15 for the day. So they actually set up a mock prison in the basement of Stanford at the school. And basically they rigged the basement to have like little fake jail cells in it to set it up like a real prison.
They wanted to make it seem as real as possible. It wasn't just like go in a classroom and pretend like you're in prison.
And it's important to keep in mind the people that were doing it knew that this was fake. They knew that this was an experiment.
Absolutely.
It's not like they were trying to trick them into thinking they actually were in jail. That's kind of what I thought when I first learned about this experiment, because I couldn't believe anyone would actually sign up to do this.
Totally voluntary. And a lot of the people that volunteered in the experiment kept talking about they needed a summer job. And they're like, it was either doing this or flipping patties, and I would rather do this. I was like, why?
I would rather flip patties than be a prisoner.
In addition to creating little jail cells, there was also a small room called solitary confinement that they would put prisoners in if they would misbehave or, not follow instructions properly.
Which is real.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it was a really small room, didn't have any light in it, no windows, basically just...
You go insane.
Yeah, it's basically like a little timeout room.
But for a long time by yourself with no concept of time or when you're getting
light.
out.
You're just sitting in a dark room, small by yourself.
Pretty fucked up. Obviously, even though they knew they were all just students participating in this experiment, they wanted it to feel as real as possible, so they actually had half of the people doing it, the prisoner guards, wearing military uniforms.
As well as silver reflective sunglasses, and that was to kind of, they didn't want the prisoners to be able to, look at them eye to eye. They wanted to kind of separate the...
like dehumanize them.
Exactly, and just really make them feel like they're kind of on a whole different level than the prisoners.
Yes.
Then the prisoners were forced to wear real, jumpsuits as if they were in prison. And they took away their names, which is really interesting. They named them just numbers, like prisoner 1, 2, 4, 8 or whatever.
So they completely take your identity from you, strip you from everything you know, and throw you into something different.
Not to mention, while they're doing all of this, they're completely humiliating and, dehumanizing you, saying that you're worthless, making fun of your body. I mean, they did a whole strip search as soon as they came in.
Of course, the guards started making fun of their genitals and humiliating them. And really, it's the start of what's known as the degradation process, which not only prisons, but lots of military-type outfits use that process.
Completely degraded you and There was really no limits on what the guards were able to do because the whole idea was they wanted to see how far they could get.
And they also blindfolded these guys, so they had no idea that they were just in the basement of their school. So that makes it even more real feeling as well. You could feel like you were really in some type of jail. So the first day of the experiment, nothing too interesting or exciting really happened.
They basically kind of just sat in their cells and hung out, weren't really making a fuss or complaining about being in the cells, weren't, you know, talking back to the guards. It was
still an experiment at that point. Hello, how you doing? And many of them said that at this point, they were still aware of the fact that this was an experiment or a type of job for them, and the fear hadn't set in, the realness of it hadn't set in. But it was only the second day when people started to act up. Only day 2, the prisoners took their mattresses and barricaded themselves in their jail so that the prisoner guards couldn't come in and to deal with them.
Yeah.
After day 2,
the prison guards got pissed, to say the least. There was one guard in particular named Dave Eshelman, and he was very determined to stir up the pot and make things as troublesome as possible for all of the prisoners. He was a guard, and he wanted to show the prisoners who was boss.
I arrived independently at the conclusion that this experiment must have been put together to prove a point about prisons being a cruel and inhumane place. And therefore, I would do my part, you know, to help those results come about. I was a confrontational and arrogant 18-year-old at the time, and you know, I said somebody ought to stir things up a bit here.
So he started treating the prisoners really poorly, and of course they started to react to this and act out.
I think that I was the instigator of this whole schedule of harassment.
Some of the meaningless work that the guards made the prisoners do would be like get up in the middle of the night and do meaningless work like scrub toilets or clean bathrooms with their bare hands, or just
like manual hard labor.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind is when you disrupt someone's sleep pattern, I mean, they become super disoriented, and it's very unhealthy to have such a chopped up sleep cycle and be woken up randomly and put to work and then put back to sleep.
Yes, yes. That would totally like screw with your mental state, I feel like.
Not to mention there are no windows in the basement, so the prisoners had no idea if it was day or night, so they really didn't know if when they were, you know, sleeping for the night, if it was really night. They had no concept of time, no concept of a schedule. It was like, get up, clean the bathroom, all right, go back in your cell.
Eventually one of the prisoners, prisoner 8612, decided he had enough of this bullshit and said he wanted to leave.
Keep in mind, most of the time when you're doing some type of experiment, your participants are clearly able to leave whenever they want to. If it's in the middle, you know, no one's allowed to force you to stay for an experiment, even if, you know, there's a specific time. You're always allowed to leave. No one can force you to stay. 8612 went up to Zimbardo and said, look, dude, I want out of here. Instead of Zimbardo acting like a psychologist running the experiment, he...
a professor that's employed at the school.
Right, saying, okay, professionally, yes, you can leave the experiment. Obviously, I'm not going to keep you here if you don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that, he kind of took on the role of prison superintendent, and instead of being able to separate himself and become once again Professor Zimbardo, he was the superintendent of the prison and really didn't want 8612 to leave.
So he said, no man, you can't go.
So 8612 was saying that he was being harassed by the guards and therefore it was time for him to get out, and Zimbardo responded with, well, what we can do is move you into a different section to where the guards hopefully won't harass you as much, and you should have a little bit more of a quiet time. Now obviously this isn't saying no, you can't leave, but it's also not being
diverting.
Yeah, exactly.
But him being so upset and sleep deprived and delusional, he misinterpreted that and went back to the other prisoners telling them that Zimbardo won't let anyone leave. So obviously once these participants in this study thought that they were actually not allowed to leave this place, that's when shit really started to hit the fan and things started to feel like an actual prison.
So after 8612 decided to stay, he actually became extremely mentally disturbed to the point where they forcefully had to let him go.
Damn it! Fucked up! You don't know, I mean, God. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside, don't you know? I feel really fucked up inside, you don't know. I gotta go. To a doctor, anything. I can't say that. I'm fucked up. I don't know how to explain it. I'm fucked up inside! No!
As an experience, it was unique. I've never screamed so loud in my life. I've never been so upset in my life. And it was an experience of being out of control.
At that point, it was becoming, you know, a concern of his mental health, and so they told him to leave. So he was really worried that 8612 was going to bring his friends back and try and
break out his prisoners.
Yeah, he actually took down the entire prison, moved it secretly to a different location while they waited for 8612 and his friends to come back, and it never actually happened. So they had to move the whole thing back over for no apparent reason at all.
Dude, it seems like he was just like losing his mind. The professor who was doing this,
that's
like,
how
completely
serious
lost
he
touch
was
with
about
reality.
it. Yeah, even in interviews, he doesn't deny the fact that, you know, he was taking it too far and he kind of lost sight of what he really was doing.
Yeah.
He definitely is like, yeah, I took it way too far.
Yeah, shit. So then there was prisoner 819. Prisoner 819 decided that he was done with this shit too. Wanted to leave the experiment, so he decided to completely stop participating in anything and locked himself in his cell.
You're not only not getting a cigarette, but for as long as the cell's blockaded, you're going to be in solitary when you get out.
The crazy thing is that once 819 decided to not partake in any of the duties that everyone else partakes in, they actually punished the other prisoners because of something that he had done.
That is the worst. That used to happen to me at dance practice. Like, someone would fuck up and like everyone
Exactly.
else would have to do
It's always
squats.
like, so it really wanted to take away any individualism that each prisoner had. Give the idea that they're all one group, and if one person messes up, you're all gonna pay for it. It was almost a form of dictatorship in the way, because the guards, you know, decided what's gonna happen for every single person. Everyone's getting the same treatment. If one person messes up, it doesn't matter, you're all getting screwed for
What
it.
I don't understand though is why they didn't try harder to leave. If that was me, I'd be like, show me the proof that I have to stay there. Like, bring me the principal or something. So eventually, prisoner 819 got really, really sick of this and thought it was better if he just left. So Zimbardo said he could leave, and he started kind of giving him a little exit speech, you know, talking about
his
next
compensation.
steps, compensation, whatever. And as he was getting kind of the lowdown to head out, the other prisoners started screaming, "Prisoner 819 did a bad thing," over and over again. And after he heard this, he started crying and told Zimbardo that he actually wanted to stay.
He couldn't leave his prisoners behind. He didn't want to disappoint them.
And this is when it started to hit Zimbardo that maybe this was affecting the test subjects in a negative way. Maybe this was taking things a little too far, and maybe they were just losing touch with reality a bit too much.
And it's crazy to see how fast things can turn.
Yeah,
I mean,
this was
was
like
day
4
4.
days.
Day 4.
While prisoner 819 was having his little freak out and crying, Zimbardo kept saying over and over again, "This is an experiment. This is not a prison. You can leave." All these things. And then all of a sudden he had this moment of clarity where it just, he could tell his eyes kind of cleared, and he could,
almost like the fog cleared from his mind, and he
Yeah.
realized, wait, this really is an experiment.
Yeah,
I'm not a
this is
prisoner.
fake.
I don't have to be here.
I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not in jail.
Yeah, I can completely leave on my own will.
Yep.
So he pieced.
After he left, they found someone new to fill his spot, prisoner 416. And this guy was blindfolded, stripped, treated like everyone else, and put into a cell.
416 had a little bit of a different tactic he wanted to try on the guards. Instead of going with the flow and, you know, taking all the punishments and stuff, or barricading your room, he decided to just kind of go on a hunger strike and not eat. Now, you may think this is kind of harmless, but this actually made the guards really angry, because for once someone wasn't following the protocol and their rules.
Yeah.
Even if it was simple as, I'm not eating that.
So this guy, I mean, he literally just got there and he's already on a hunger strike.
He already had, I think, going in the idea of
Kind of disrupting things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wanting to test out.
He had a clearer mind probably than the rest of the guys, so he was probably more aware of the fact that this was just an experiment. He was just trying to like add to the experiment.
Not to mention, by the time that he was there, most of the guards and prisoners, you know, had already been exposed to this for long enough to have psychological changes.
Yeah.
So it had been a few meals since he had eaten anything, and the prison guards were getting really frustrated, so they decided to throw him into solitary confinement and basically not let him out for quite some time, while all the other prisoners would go up to the door and bang on it really hard and say, "Thanks a lot, prison 416. The guards had them do that, and I think that was their way of being like,
making him feel guilty.
making him feel guilty, but at the same time, they have no choice but to do that.
So by the end of the 5th day, 4 of the prisoners already pretty much had a mental breakdown and had to leave.
So another psychologist, Christina Maslick, actually came and visited Zimbardo because she kind of wanted to see the experiment that he was running.
See how it was playing out.
Yeah, and so I think Zimbardo had the thought that she was going to come in and be like, "This is really cool. How, you know, realistic." And,
Yeah, wow, good work.
Yeah.
The guards had lined up the prisoners to go to the toilet, had bags over their head, chains on their feet, and were marching by. And I looked up and I saw this circus, this parade. And I said, "Hey, Chris, you know, look at that." I looked up
And I just began to feel sick to my stomach. I had this just chilling, sickening feeling of watching this. And I just, you know, I just turned away. And I just let loose in this emotional tirade. I just lost it. I was angry.
And I think this was kind of the push that Zimbardo needed to hear from his, you know, fellow colleague, being like, what are you doing? This is not an experiment. This is torture. You cannot do this.
And I'm furious. I'm saying, you're supposed to, and then we had a big argument. You're supposed to be a psychologist. This is this interesting dynamic behavior in such a few days. I'm going through this whole thing. She says, no, young boys are suffering and you are responsible. You're letting it happen. I said, oh my God, of course you're right. So in that sense, it's unethical. That is, nobody has the right, the power, the privilege to do that to other people.
So on day 6, the next day, Zimbardo decided to stop the experiment. The one thing I think is really important to take away from this is, I'm sure, you know, a lot of people who have not personally experienced an abusive relationship don't understand why that person who's in an abusive relationship cannot leave. Or
why would you stay with someone who's so awful?
And people don't understand that it's not that simple. I mean, this is first-hand proof right here that even something that's voluntary, it is really not as easy as it sounds to just decide to leave a bad situation that you're in, whether that's, you know, a relationship, romantically, or with your family or your friends or other things like that. You know, people
just feeling like they have no choice. Like, there's no other way out of this.
Or a lot of times because they don't want to seem like quitters. I mean, look at the prisoner who went back in because they were, you know, yelling at him and belittling him, saying, you're basically, you did a bad thing, you're trying to leave. Obviously, this experiment was really interesting and did show some pretty unique things, but overall, it did have a few flaws. Mainly, the sample size is way too small. I mean, you really can't run a legitimate experiment with only 25 participants and half of them leaving and new people coming in. It's not,
I don't think this experiment worked out so well.
And also, if Zimbardo was going to make an experiment like this and he wanted to participate and, you know, be the prison superintendent, he should have had another psychologist stay on the outside and look in and make sure that everything is still running smoothly. Because you can't be the psychologist running the experiment as well as a participant in the experiment.
It went from like a clear experiment for school and for research purposes to like pretend time, like play time.
It's like make
believe.
He's
like a kid again. It's so weird. Obviously, he got a lot of hate from people that were reading about this. Like, dude, seriously?
People made the argument that it was extremely unethical for Zimbardo to take in college students, even if they were participants, have them go through such trauma just to try and, you know, get some information. And it was because of cases like this that they actually passed several laws that, you know, make clear lines of what you can and cannot do in experiments.
But yeah, it's really interesting. I had no idea that there are all these like whack-ass psych experiments. And I was thinking, if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up and Janelle can join me in a series about these bizarre experiments that have gone on.
There's a lot of them. People have done some weird things.
But that's it for us today, guys. Be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on the Stanford Prison Experiment below. Did you think it was worth the information we got out of it, or should it have never been done in the first place? Definitely let us know your thoughts, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.